Well, hello again. Here's another one of my yes or no questions, the answers to which, of course, must be examined. And it's this one: did Hitler survive? Now, this question has lived on for the many years that have elapsed since the end of the Second World War. It's the one of the favorite subjects for historians, for conspiracy theorists, even for the man in the street. What a fascinating subject. The notion that he's still alive is not especially a frightening one. The fact that if Hitler were alive today, he'd be 133 years old, and as such would, in all likelihood, not constitute a grave threat to world peace. But nonetheless, the conspiracy idea, the question rolls on unimpeded, it would seem. Books continue to be written. Furthermore, the efforts to confirm one way or another, especially through attention to forensic science, from the start have been bedeviled by the fact that it was the Russians who came into that part of Berlin during the fall of Berlin. They were the ones that took the land where the Fuhrerbunker was located, which was located itself underneath the ground of the Chancellery, and who therefore took what remains there were of Hitler with them, and have been, to some people's way of thinking, representing truthfully, misrepresenting what they had, what they discovered about it, perhaps to suit their own propaganda, their own kind of political narratives. It goes on until this day. Putin has authorized some access to the Russian archives, but apparently not on a completely unrestricted basis. Sounds a bit like the Vatican archives. So I guess some people can be forgiven for thinking that the question is not entirely settled yet. Okay, well, let's start out by examining some of the arguments. Let's start with the yes side. Yes, he did survive. Well, to begin with, we know that some other prominent Nazis made it successfully to South America, to places like Argentina and Brazil and so forth. Joseph Mengele, the crazy evil doctor, Adolf Eichmann, the final solution chap, the one who was finally taken to Israel. Quite a few others actually made it to South America. So if they could do it, surely Hitler could have done it. He certainly would have had the resources, the planning skills available to him to pull it off. So why not? Another argument in favor of it is some of the lack of corroborative evidence on the other side of the argument. For example, Marshal Zhukov, who was the not necessarily the supreme Soviet commander, but certainly the leading general at the time of the fall of Berlin and in charge of the troops that actually took over the space occupied by the Fuhrerbunker, when asked subsequently about whether there was evidence that Hitler had survived, said no comment, and did so repeatedly, thus raising some issues. Dwight Eisenhower, of course, who was, of course, the Supreme Allied Commander, who certainly would have had the best information available to anybody in the subject available to him, when asked if Hitler had survived, his comment was, well, it's extremely unlikely, but the evidence does not appear to be very reliable. I suppose he was talking about the Russians sitting atop of it. So there's a lot of equivocation at work here. next, of course, is the whole subject of the role of the Vatican and the Vatican rat lines. And some of this goes back to the fact that the Pope during the war, Pius XII, who was the Pope from, I think, 1939 to 1948, something like that, had been the papal nuncio in Germany, in other words, the papal ambassador to Germany, in the early days of the Nazi and Hitler chancellorship of Germany. And Pacelli, as his name then was, the man who became Pius XII, developed quite a close relationship with Hitler. And therefore, for Hitler to have availed himself of the well-known Vatican rat lines, the facility that apparently was made available to a lot of Nazis to escape and get to South America, would have been quite easy to manage. And of course, the claims about this go on to this day. Not very long ago, Cornwell wrote a book called Hitler's Pope, much supported as well as excoriated, depending on whose side of the argument you're on, who claimed that not only was the Pope a virulent anti-Semite, but an admirer of fascist autocracy, because that's the way he wanted to run the church. And so he and Hitler would have gotten along well, and he certainly would have been prepared to take care of Hitler's escape. Another argument, of course, that has rumbled on and on has been the existence of many sightings of Hitler, people who are sure they've seen him here and there, particularly in South America, and actually in other countries in Scandinavia, in the mountains of Austria, and so forth. So, and there are even some pictures, some photographs that purported to be that of Hitler, who have been taken in different places. So you can look at the picture, make up your mind. What do you think? Is that Hitler or not? So there's a bit of some possibilities there. And then there's the famous example of the Soviet piece of Hitler's skull, which was preserved, trotted out occasionally to confirm that Hitler had been killed and that the Soviets had his remains. And this skull was actually, as time went on and forensic technology improved, was subject to some rigorous forensic DNA testing, I think at the University of Connecticut or something in the States, and it turned out to be the skull of a woman. So that right away fueled the notion that, gosh, if they're lying about this, what else are they lying about? He's probably still out there. So anyway, those are the arguments. Some of them, reasonably convincing, but principally about casting doubt, talking about how something might have happened or might not have happened, the likelihood that had Hitler wanted to, he could have escaped, etc., etc. So that's about the size of the yes argument. So now let's take a look at the no arguments. Now, he did not survive the end of the war and the disaster of Berlin. British scientists and historians and so forth finally did have access to the area where Hitler died, or where they were sure Hitler died, and one of the conclusions they came to was that he had killed himself with a Walther PPK semi-automatic pistol. By the way, that's the same pistol that James Bond used in the movies. He was always talking about his Walther PPK. And that particular gun has also been used in some other infamous crimes, including the assassination of the Korean dictator. So, the Walther PPK is a noteworthy gun, and that's the one that Hitler had, and that's the one he killed himself and Eva with. Second, there was the sheer enormity of the assault on Berlin, and particularly of the Soviet artillery bombardment of Berlin. Someone said that the amount of explosive material used in that bombardment was equal to all of the bombing of Germany during the war. It was that enormous. And as a consequence, the city was absolutely laid waste. There was just nothing left. So the prospect that in the middle of all of that, Hitler could have not only survived but made his escape is just about impossible to believe. He would have had to start it much earlier, and of course we know from the historical record that he did retreat to Berlin and eventually to the Fuhrerbunker in order to preserve himself while he was still in hopes of fending off and defending Berlin. So it simply couldn't have happened just because of the sheer devastation. Finally, or almost finally, we have his will, which in it he says that he has chosen death over the ignominy and political unacceptability of being tried, or for that matter, tortured and killed by the invading hordes. Of course, one could say that that's a fake as well, but the document itself is pretty well attested to, and we have it, and so in itself makes a pretty good argument. And finally, one of the best arguments are the dental arguments, and as we all know, in the case of badly burned bodies, the teeth always seem to survive and can be examined for a comparison to dental records, which apparently is even then was a pretty well-known and well-established science. And both the Russians did this by actually talking to Hitler's dentist, who confirmed that those indeed were entirely consistent with the shape and condition of Hitler's teeth, and as was a French pathologist some years later who also looked at the available information and was sure once again that those were Hitler's teeth. So there's the situation. Well, what's my take on this? I guess my take on this is more about the conspiracy theories. Why do people latch onto these things? Because their evidence, to be honest, is pretty weak. But people love conspiracies. Well, first of all, they're paranoid. They'll take the view that they're always going to lie to us because they have evil plans for us, irrespective of who they are. So that comes through in a lot of the more extreme conspiracy literature. And in a similar vein, many people simply object to being educated or advised by authority. Anything that people in positions of authority say automatically should be rejected and believed. Another possibility, of course, is it's just great entertainment. And by the way, the stuff of books, for which there's always a big market and therefore a lucrative market. So for kind of all of the wrong reasons, this thing lives on, but forget about it. He didn't survive the war. It's as simple as that. Okay, well, I hope you liked that. I hope it clarified this ongoing silly kind of story a bit. And if you liked it, give me a like, comment, please. Subscribe, of course. Hit the notification bell, and I enjoyed it. I hope you did. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.